There was a time when Jennie Kim didn't just walk onto a stage, she detonated it. Back in the early days of Blackpink, Jennie wasn't simply keeping pace with the industry's best, she was setting the tempo. Every move carried intention, every stare felt calculated, and every performance radiated the kind of raw hunger that separated stars from legends in the making. She was the blueprint for modern idol charisma, the reference point fans and critics alike used when talking about stage presence done right. But as the years passed, that narrative began to fracture. Slowly at first, then louder, with every comeback conversations shifted from praise to frustration. Performances started to feel selective, as if full effort had become optional rather than expected. The term inconsistent crept into discussions, followed closely by the more damaging accusation lazy. For fans who remembered the fire she once brought, watching that reputation take shape was painful, not because they wanted to criticize her, but because they knew exactly what she was capable of. That's why the announcement of her MMA 2025 appearance felt monumental. This wasn't just another stage. This was her long-awaited return to a major Korean award show, a chance to rewrite the story, to silence the doubts, and to remind everyone why her name still carries so much weight. The stakes were sky high. Expectations were unforgiving. This was supposed to be the night where everything clicked back into place. Yet from the very opening moment, something felt off. There was an unmistakable heaviness in her presence, an almost distant energy that hung over the stage. Even before the set fully unfolded, the question quietly surfaced in the minds of viewers. Was this really the comeback we'd been waiting for, or was this the beginning of a much harder conversation about fame, burnout, and what happens when the pressure finally shows? If you want to understand how one performance can change the entire narrative around an idol, stay right here, make sure you're subscribed, and let's keep going because this story is only just getting started. The performance opened with a concept that immediately demanded attention, a visual statement meant to signal growth, depth, and artistic maturity. Draped beneath an enormous veil etched with ancient Hangul poetry, Jennie positioned herself not just as an idol, but as a cultural symbol. The lighting washed the stage in cool blues, turning her into a silhouette suspended between tradition and modern spectacle. On paper, it was brilliant. This was the kind of high-concept staging you expect from someone representing the legacy of Blackpink on one of Korea's biggest nights. Vocally, there were moments that worked. Her tone was controlled, restrained, and technically stable. She didn't oversing or chase unnecessary power notes, allowing the atmosphere of the song to breathe. It was polished, elegant, and undeniably stylish. For a brief moment, it felt like she was reclaiming that main character aura she's been marketed with for years. The problem wasn't what she chose to do, it was what never arrived afterward. That veil introduction stretched on building anticipation to a near breaking point. When she finally emerged, the stage was begging for impact, for a surge of energy that would justify the slow burn. But it never came. Instead, the movement stayed muted, almost static. Her expressions felt distant, her eyes glassy, like someone physically present but mentally elsewhere. Rather than commanding the space, she seemed swallowed by it. What made it more jarring was the contrast between concept and execution. The song evoked movement, ambition, the chaos of a city that never sleeps, yet she looked like she was already exhausted by it. The choreography was executed but not embodied. Each step felt checked off rather than lived in. The spark that once made her performances feel dangerous and alive was missing, replaced by a careful, almost cautious delivery. And that's where the discomfort set in. Because when an artist of her caliber chooses restraint, it reads as intentional. But when restraint drains the life out of a performance, audiences start wondering whether it's a choice or a symptom of something deeper. If the opening segment raised quiet concerns, the transition into the next track turned those concerns into full-blown scrutiny. This was supposed to be the turning point, the moment where the narrative flipped and the energy finally surged. Everything about this section was designed for redemption. The beat tightened, the choreography sharpened, and the camera work closed in as if daring her to reconnect with the audience watching at home. On a technical level, nothing was outright wrong. Her movements were precise, clean, and controlled. Every step landed exactly where it was supposed to. She hit the accents, kept her timing sharp, and maintained that icy high-fashion cool she's known for. Visually, it worked. She looked expensive, untouchable, perfectly styled for the image she's been cultivating as a global soloist. But performance isn't just about hitting marks. It's about projection, about filling a massive stage with presence. And here, the emptiness became impossible to ignore. Despite flawless execution, the performance felt mechanical, like muscle memory on autopilot. There was no emotional weight behind the movement, no sense that she was feeling the music rather than counting beats. It was polished, but hollow. As the song progressed, viewers waited for a crack in the armor, a smirk, a burst of intensity, a moment where she'd lean into the choreography and remind everyone why she commands so much attention. That moment never arrived. Instead, she seemed to fold inward, shrinking against the scale of the stage rather than owning it. The energy plateaued and stayed there, never dipping into disaster but never climbing into greatness either. This is the paradox that frustrates fans the most. She's clearly capable, the skill is there, the experience is there, but something vital is missing. When an idol reaches this level, effort alone isn't enough. Audiences expect intention, connection, and hunger. Without those elements, even the cleanest performance starts to feel forgettable. And with every second that passed, one uncomfortable thought kept resurfacing: what happens when perfection becomes routine and passion becomes optional? By the time the final track approached, anticipation shifted into expectation. This was meant to be the exclamation point, the moment designed to erase doubt and leave a lasting impression. Visually, it almost worked. The styling was immaculate, tailored to perfection, catching the light in a way that screamed star power. For a brief opening stretch, her aura did the heavy lifting. She knew where the cameras were, how to angle her body, how to sell the illusion of dominance. For a split second, it felt like the comeback everyone had been waiting for. Then, reality settled in. The live vocals were barely there. Lines that should have anchored the performance slipped by, replaced almost entirely by the backing track. What made it harder to ignore was the context. This wasn't a chaotic tour stop or a physically punishing encore stage. This was a major domestic award show, a moment of prestige where live delivery isn't just appreciated, it's expected. Watching entire verses pass without her voice felt less like a technical choice and more like a retreat. Even the choreography couldn't fully compensate. The movements were there, but they lacked urgency, as if performed through resistance. The energy never rose high enough to justify the silence on the mic. When an artist prioritizes performance over vocals, the performance itself has to explode. Here, it simmered. The disconnect became glaring, the image of a triumphant soloist versus the reality of a stage that felt strangely undercommitted. What lingered wasn't anger but confusion. Was this exhaustion, burnout, or a shift in priorities where visual presence now outweighs musical responsibility? When an idol stands on stage holding a career-defining award, the audience expects to hear the song that earned it. Instead, they were left questioning how much was being held back and why. So where does this leave the conversation surrounding Jennie after MMA 2025? On paper, the night was still a victory. Winning Record of the Year is no small feat, and the success of her solo work proves that her name still carries immense weight in the industry. The charts responded. The judges responded. From a career standpoint, this year could easily be labeled her peak as a solo artist, but performances don't exist on paper, and for fans who followed her journey from the very beginning, numbers alone don't tell the full story. What lingered after the lights went down was a sense of imbalance. The aesthetics were flawless. The concepts were ambitious. The branding was airtight. Yet, the most human elements of performing, the live vocals, the emotional connection, the hunger to dominate the stage, felt increasingly secondary. It created an uncomfortable contrast between the prestige of the award she held and the effort displayed on stage. When those two don't align, criticism becomes inevitable. This is where the lazy narrative becomes difficult to escape, not because fans want to believe it, but because the visual evidence feeds it. When effort feels rationed, audiences start questioning intent. Is this the result of burnout in an industry that demands too much, or is it the consequence of reaching a level of fame where expectations feel optional rather than mandatory? That question is far more unsettling than any single missed note. Or skipped line. Jennie now stands at a crossroads. One path leans fully into image, fashion, and curated mystique. The other demands a return to the raw fire that once made her impossible to look away from. Both paths lead to success, but only one silences the doubts, and until that choice becomes clear on stage, the conversation isn't going anywhere. Now it's your turn. Did this performance live up to the moment, or did it confirm your concerns? Was the award deserved regardless of the stage, or should performance still matter at this level? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments, keep it respectful, and if you want more unfiltered K-pop breakdowns like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This story isn't over, and you won't want to miss what comes next.